on that. For some reason it's hung up. All right. Well, it looks like we are live. So awesome. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in today. This is part 3 of our SIE success series. This one is called Beating Burnout and Building Confidence. I'm your guide, Clayton Norman. I'm the social media marketing manager here for Serify, which is the parent company for Past Perfect. And we have got a great conversation today. We've got an incredible guest. I'm going to get to Anushka here in just a minute. But before we get started, couple of housekeeping things. If you're tuning in, please let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We love seeing people chime in from all over the country, all across the globe in some cases. And we love to see that. We'll share your location on the screen so everybody can get together on that. So let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have questions, comments, anything that you want to share during this conversation, please engage with us. This is a conversation and we want to hear from you. We love to hear your experiences and your questions. We will answer questions as they come in. We will also have a little bit of dedicated time at the end of the stream in order to answer any of those questions. So if you're studying for the SIE right now, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, distracted, or just burned out, trust me, you are not alone, okay? We're going to be talking about all of those things here today. And if you missed parts 1 and 2 of our SIE success series, you can find them on the Past Perfect YouTube channel, as well as primarily on our LinkedIn page. So please go back and check those out if you hadn't. We already talked about in those sessions, we covered what the SIE is and why it's important for your career in finance. We also talked about how to pass the SIE and had some really great concrete strategies for how you can do your best and show up on exam day ready to pass. Today, we're talking about something that's just as important, and that's how to stay consistent, how to put in the work without getting burned out, and how to build confidence while you're studying. Today, I've got Past Perfect instructor Anushka Chong, who works closely with students, navigating the exact challenges that you might be facing right now. So as you're watching, again, drop your questions in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to see that. And if we don't get a chance to answer your questions here live and in real time, keep an eye on the comments, because we will answer every question that comes in the comments if for some reason we don't have time to answer it live here. So I'm going to kick it over to Anushka. She is a coach, mentor, and instructor. She is one of the bright lights that we have here at Past Perfect. She's a lot of fun. You may recognize her from some other videos that we've posted on our social accounts. But I want to kick it over to Anushka to let her introduce herself a little bit. Anushka, tell us about your background, how you came to Past Perfect, and what it is that inspires you about doing this work with these kind of students. And guys, while Anushka's introducing herself, again, please let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to see that. And let's get going. So Anushka, over to you.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining today. As Clayton said, I am Anushka. I'm one of the instructors here at Past Perfect. It's great to join you guys today to talk about such an important topic. And a lot of times we focus on material and getting questions right and learning the material, but we don't think about the personal things that go into it, things like making sure our brains are ready for this and how to incorporate into our lifestyles. So love talking about this particular topic. Now, I come from several years in the industry. I worked at some big firms for a little over a decade before officially moving into the instructor position here at Past Perfect. Now, while I was at those big firms, my roles were anywhere from financial advising to more administrative duties, but it was always involved with coaching of some sort. So whether it was coaching on communication skills, whether it was coaching and teaching material for passing exams, whether it was telling people how to use the various computer programs that we all will have to use at our jobs, right? All of those types of things I was always involved in. It's because what I really love to do is to kind of help everybody else out, right? I love that light bulb moment when you finally get it and you realize, hey, I can do this on my own, right? I'm not as worse off as I thought it was. I can actually do things, right? So that's kind of where I come in and where I help out students. I am based in Florida, so if any Florida people out there, welcome. We are laughing at everybody else in their cold weather still, so happy to join in.
All right. Thank you, Anushka. It's great to have you here. If you're just tuning in, I know some people don't always jump in right at the beginning of the stream. We are talking about how to stay on track, avoid burnout, and build confidence in your SIE exam prep. So that's what we're talking about today. Please let us know where you're tuning in from in the comments. And again, if you have questions, concerns, utilitarian comments, drop those in there too. We love to see those. So, okay, Anushka, let's jump right into it. First question, why do so many SIE candidates burn out?
That's a loaded question. There's a lot of different reasons why burnout happens, but one of the primary things is because we have so much going on in our brains, right? We are not in high school anymore where all our job was studying and taking tests, right? So we have careers, we have families, we have personal things going on, whether it's trying to work out and get healthy, or trying to just keep on track with cleaning our houses. That's my big problem. Those kinds of things on top of now I have to spend a significant amount of my time studying material, and I haven't studied in decades, some of us, or years for some of us, or for people like me, I never really picked up a book. I kind of learned by just listening to somebody talk to me, and I would take a test. But we don't really have that with these types of exams, right? We actually have to read textbooks, and it's not something that we're comfortable with. So all of this stuff at one time is extremely taxing for our brains, and it's very difficult. And what do our brains do? They shut off. They just say, nah, we're done. We don't want to do this anymore. So that's really where it occurs, because you're overloaded, but also because some people are hyper-focused on, oh, I have to study this to pass the exam, and I feel the guilt when I take time off, right? I feel bad if I go hang out with my friends, or I feel bad if I go to the movies, or if I go out to dinner, because I really should be using that time to study. Well, that's what prevents burnout. So what you should be doing is all the fun stuff in addition to all the hard stuff, right? So don't give up on your life. We do have to kind of balance that a little bit. And that's kind of what really drives that whole burnout thing, is just we're too hyper-focused.
If there's anything that you take away from this conversation, it is don't cut out all the fun stuff.
That's what makes life fun, right?
that is, yeah, we are on board with that. Okay. All the things you mentioned, life, career, family, cleaning the house, staying fit, all of those things. It's a lot. So realistically, how should someone who's preparing for the SIE fit studying into life, all of those things?
It is a challenge, right? And this is something we have to prioritize. First of all, we have to remember, why are we doing this? What's the point? All right. The point is to put you on a career path that will lead to better payouts, more opportunities in the future. So focusing on the why is really good, because I think a lot of times when we get into the nitty-gritty, we forget why we're doing this. And if we don't have the reason or the purpose behind what we're doing, well, then we're not going to do it, right? So that's one thing. So put it up on your board, on your mirror at home. Why am I torturing myself with this study process? Okay. Reminding yourself the driving factor here. Ways that you can kind of help integrate this into your life. So first of all, figuring out what is required from you on a day-to-day basis, and then what can kind of slack off a little bit, right? So if you're one of those people that clean their houses every single day, maybe you don't have to clean it every day. Maybe you clean it every other day or every 3 days, or you break up and we clean this little piece and not that piece. So we have to adjust a little bit, because our time now has to be shared with a new activity. Okay. So again, prioritizing what's important, what has to get done, what can take a little bit of a backseat for now, and then popping in your studies. Now, a lot of people tend to have this idea of, oh, well, I'll do all this other stuff, and then when I find time to study, that's when I'll study. Okay. When do we find time to do things? We don't, unless we put it in our calendars and say, this is an appointment I need to go to. So if you're struggling with managing your time, for example, I'm a big fan of time blocking. For those people who need to say, okay, between 9 and 10 a.m., I'm checking emails, I'm responding to emails, or I'm going to the gym, whatever the case is. And then from there, okay, this next 2-hour set, this is when I do work, or this 3-hour set, this is when I have with the kids. Whatever the case is, you're going to go ahead and time block it. Now, I would put in things that you can't do without, right? So if you have a job, obviously you can't miss jobs, right? So you're going to want to go in and make sure you time block your work schedule, right? So there's that. If you have children, you can't neglect your kids. So we want to make sure we time block in for kids. So having when you're making breakfast, when you have to take them to sports games, when you have to pick them up from school, all of that stuff is time blocked in, right? Then if the gym is your thing, not my thing, but if it's your thing, right? Make sure you block that in as well. And then, of course, now that we have the skeleton of your schedule, let's go ahead and add in those time frames for your study. And what you will notice is every day will look different. Some days will be less studying. Some days will be more studying. And that's okay, right? It's okay not to sit down for 2 hours and drill your brain with material. It's just not going to happen. Some of us have that luxury, right? Some of us have a job where, oh, you can study for your SIE while you're working. And that's great. And some of us have to fit it in. So time block, commit to it, have certain areas where sometimes you might spend 30 minutes on studying. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes it's while your food is heating up in the microwave, you pick up some flashcards and you read your flashcards. Other times, oh, I'm going to the library, no distractions. I got 2 hours. Let me go ahead and set it and forget it, okay? Now, for those of us that might have a little bit of a brain that travels a little bit when we're doing things, right? We sit down and we do one activity, but our brain's on something else. Here's a little tip. Set your timer on your phone. Set it for 5, 10, 30 minutes, whatever timer you want to put. You are not allowed to distract yourself or move from that spot until that timer goes off, okay? When the timer goes off, you're done. You're in the clear. Run away and do something else. But until that timer goes off, you are in this one space. That helps a lot of people that have little ADHD issues or other attention issues when you're learning, because this is not fun stuff. We'll be honest here. It's not fun to sit here and read about laws, right? It's not. So we have to pretend that we're having fun while we're doing it. So we're going to time block it out or set our alarms on our phones and then just focus for that amount of time and then move on. Okay.
Bounded study time to help.
Bounded. This is not your whole entire life. We still have life to live.
Help it stay focused. Yeah, that makes a huge difference for me when I'm focusing on projects, different things like that. So that speaks to me. Okay, I think you spoke to some of this a little bit, but keeping it sustainable. What does a sustainable study routine look like? And I would imagine, it's probably a little bit different for everybody, but generally, how do you think about that? Sustainability in terms of avoiding, stressing out, burnout, those types of things.
Absolutely. It does stem off of what I was just talking about, right? So making sure you have priority lists, making sure that you are still paying attention to those things in life that you require to pay attention, because what's going to happen? If you focus only on your studies and you neglect other things in your life, then you feel guilty. We don't want to feel guilty. That's not a good feeling to have, right? So making sure that you prioritize things, but also sustainability is letting your brain rest, right? And that's where burnout comes from. Right? We talked about where burnout starts from, and it's the overwhelming magnitude of stuff that we put in our brains and we task our brains to do. So if we are having a little fun, going out to the movies, meeting up with our friends, taking a break, watching some garbage TV, right? Don't go kill any brain cells out in the world, but go to dinner. So all of those kinds of things help us to relax, help us to take a beat for a moment, reset, and then we can tackle the hard stuff in life again, right? If you don't have those moments, your brain does not have time to repair itself. It's just like working out, right? If you're trying to build up really big muscles and have like this fit body, do you work out 24/7? No, because your muscles are torn. That's the part of the process of building them. And you have to have rest days built in so that they can repair the tissue that you've just ripped up and trying to build. That's the same thing that's going on inside of our brain. We just don't see it and we don't feel it the same way that we do with our muscles. So that's all about sustainability.
Brain is a muscle. Okay. How can students stay consistent without overloading themselves?
Consistent without overloading. So I think that definitely goes back to time management and being realistic with what you're doing and seeing how much time you have, right? I have a lot of students that come to me, oh, I want to study every day. I want to commit 3 hours. Love that goal. Can you realistically do it? What's going on in your life, right? Um, some of us have that luxury. Some of us don't, right? And not feeling bad about the fact that we have other things going on in life. I think that's really important. And also just kind of understanding that it's okay if you don't have 2 hours today. It's okay if you had a really bad day at work and mentally you're just not there that day. Maybe you plan to have an hour study, but really all you can end up with is 30 minutes. That's fine. That's 30 minutes you didn't do before, right? So rewarding yourself for the time and efforts that you've already put into what you're doing. And it's that disciplinary thing, right? It's like, again, working out. It's the one thing I can compare because that's what I struggle with too. Cleaning the house and working out. Those are my things, right? If I can get to the gym and maybe I'm not going to pound out a 5K that day, but hey, if I walked, that's a lot better than sitting on the couch, right? If I decided not to eat a cheesecake, but I had an apple instead, well, that was a better decision. Okay. So just kind of rewarding yourself for small good decisions you make. Also, just kind of understanding that life is life. Some days we're going to feel bad. Some days we're going to feel like super people, right? We have superpowers and we could take on the world and the world is your oyster. Love those days. Other days we want to crawl in a hole. Just kind of being realistic and self-assessing what you're going through that day and not beating yourself up because, hey, you're having a bad day and maybe you can't study. Don't force yourselves in those situations because what's going to happen is your brain will not retain anything you read. You will sit there for 2 hours reading the same exact page. I've done it. It doesn't work. You will never learn anything on that page, right? So chalk it up. This is not that day. Maybe I have 10 minutes in me. Do 10 minutes and walk away. It's okay. Right now, am I doing that every day? No. Okay. We can't use that excuse every single day. Right. But using it, there's a fine line with when I can back away and say, let me try something different versus I'm going to push myself a little bit. So the way we push ourselves on those days where we just realize, oh, I had a lot of consecutive bad days, I'm slacking off. What do? Change up your routine a little bit. So maybe it's not reading, right? Because reading is boring. Maybe it's watching a video. Maybe it's practicing your flashcards. Maybe it's writing your dump sheets or your critical concept sheets, whatever you want to call those, right? Maybe it's reviewing your notes. It can be a variety of methods that you use to study, but it's still touching the material. It's still very important. I've actually worked with one instructor that said, you know what, if you're feeling really bad that day, watch a movie, but a movie that has some financial background to it. So like The Wolf of Wall Street or The Big Short, because the language they use is language that you're learning for this exam, right? So you'll start to see, oh, wait a second, that's what they were talking about in that movie. I kind of know that, right? So it helps to connect what you're learning with also something that's a little bit more fun, okay?
It's really interesting that you brought that up, kind of immersing yourself in the world of finance in your sort of downtime. In part 2 of our SIE Success series, JD Page also recommended a very similar thing in terms of putting on a podcast or a show that uses the same vocabulary, because the SIE is such a vocabulary and kind of terms heavy exam, that immersing yourself in that world, even through fiction, is a way to just sort of reinforce the things that you're learning. So what I heard you say, and there are a couple of things that I think are really important to highlight. Some is better than none, right? Self-compassion when things come up is really critical for staying on track and not beating yourself up too much. And you mentioned some of the really great features of the Past Perfect programs, which are the flashcards, digital flashcards you can always go check out and run through some vocabulary, even if you just have, and concepts, even if you just have a few minutes. Videos, if you're your eyes are burned out from reading the text, we also have, great videos, instructional videos that explain the concepts in a way that you can consume them fairly easily. And there was one other aspect of that I
It
have
was your
forgotten.
notes and your dump
Oh,
sheets,
your
right?
notes and your dump sheets. Yeah.
Practice writing. Those writing skills as you're writing it, lots of repetition going on in your brain. So it's a great way for you to retain information as well as writing.
All right. So, guys, if you're just tuning in, we are here with part 3 of our SIE success series. And today we are talking about how to prep for the SIE while avoiding burnout and building confidence. We're here with the incredible Anushka Chang. So if you missed the first part, don't worry, you can go back. This video will live on in perpetuity on our LinkedIn page. But let us know if you have questions, if you have comments. We would love to answer your questions, anything that you're thinking about while you're preparing for the SIE. Drop that in the comments. We're also going to share some resources in the comments. So definitely make sure that you check in on those. We'll have some links to some of our programs, as well as to some resources that can help you, whether you're considering pursuing the SIE or if you're in the process of actually preparing for it. So, all right, so let's moving on a little bit more to kind of staying on track and engaged. What should a student do if they feel like they've had some of those days where, life was happening, tough day at work, kids or school or whatever it is, just got in the way of that studying? How do you kind of come back and refocus if you feel like you've fallen behind?
And that's a great question, because I think that happens to a lot of people, right? Even small things like what you discussed about, or even big things, right? You had a death in the family, you got really ill, somebody in the family got really ill, and you had to, because of how life works, you had to put the studying down. And the thing is, we understand that stuff happens, right? Those are non-controllable things. Or where I live, I live in Florida, we have hurricanes. I can't study on a computer if I don't have power. So there's things like that just happen. It's one, all right, let me reset, refocus. It's just about making sure that this has become now back into your priority list, right? You took care of what you had to do. Let's move on and put this back into priority list. Sometimes it does take a little slower ramp up. So don't sit there and expect one day you're going to bang out 6 hours of study. That just won't happen, right? So it is, like with anything else, a slow, gradual buildup. But because you were doing the process of studying before, you will come into that practice a little bit quicker. So it might take maybe 2 to 3 days of you getting back to your books, getting back to your studying, that you realize, oh, I can do this. I can take this on again, and I can incorporate back into my schedule. So don't beat yourself up too much saying, oh, I used to be able to do this, but now I can't. All right. I used to be able to run 5 miles. I can't even walk 5 miles. Okay. It is what it is, right? That's just kind of life, but I'm going to try, and you're going to give it your best effort. And your best effort's really all that you can demand from yourself, because you cannot force your brain. It works better than a computer, but it's not a computer. It doesn't have an endless power supply, right? There is a limit to how far you can push your brain. So just kind of being more compassionate to yourself, as Clayton had said, but being self-aware and understanding that this is a commitment. This is something that you actually have to actively want to do. It doesn't happen magically. And understanding that if you don't put the time and effort into it, you're not going to wake up one day and know this stuff, right? You don't sleep on your book and learn it through your dreams. That doesn't work. Or you don't turn on the radio and just learn it while you're sleeping, like the subconscious learning method. That doesn't work. You have to put the effort in. And again, don't beat yourself up when some days are not good as other days, but it is something that you have to put forth and say, okay, nope. Just like how I'm going to eat lunch every day, I'm going to study every day, right? Same rule or same concept.
So one of the tools that we hear Past Perfect students talk about how much they appreciate, is our interactive study calendar. So how do tools like that help with this process of reducing stress and staying on track?
I love tools like that. I think the calendars are great as a guideline. I think where it helps is that it gives you a framework to focus on, so you're not kind of flailing all over the place, not knowing what to do, not knowing if you're doing too much or too little. So it really does give you a nice framework or guideline to gear your studies towards. Love it for that reason. Where this can be a little bit of an issue is if you are not being realistic about what you can do. Sometimes we have very tight timelines because of how our jobs are, and you might need to pass an exam before a certain timeline or deadline comes up. And we understand those situations do occur. Is it realistic that you can complete 3 chapters in one day and take an exam? Probably not, right? That's a lot of material, unless all you do that day is study. And that might be you, and that might be perfectly fine. And other people might say, well, I'm just studying this on the side. I have other things to do. I can't complete 3 chapters in one day. So use it again as a guideline, but also be a little bit flexible with it. So this is where I should be. Let me give my best effort to be in that area or that completion task. If I'm not there, but if I got close to it, well, celebrate that. Wow, I did more than I thought I would have gotten done, right? If I didn't get anywhere near it, well, oof, I might need to reassess my calendar a little bit and carve out some more time. Or I might need to reassess how I'm studying. Maybe don't take as many notes because I just found that I had to rewrite the entire chapter by taking all of those notes. Maybe I should watch a video that might take me a little bit less time than reading all of the material at one point. All right, so it might be a good way to reassess how you approach your studies, as well as a guiding factor with kind of the guide rails on there of where you're going throughout your studies.
Kind of a visual way to gauge.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Okay, so let's talk about confidence a little bit. You've worked with a lot of students, and I'm sure you've seen kind of the whole range of probably from overconfidence to underconfidence or not, self-doubt, right? So why is that really capable students that you've worked with or, out there still doubt themselves?
I think it stems from when we were kids and what we learned about ourselves. Or how we learn. So for those individuals that were told bad things as they were growing up, or told themselves bad things, or maybe weren't good students academically, I think that's sort of ingrained in our brains already that, hey, I'm not good at academics. I'm not good at learning. That's not my thing. And I think that a lot of people bring that into these exams. I think what we have to remember is that these exams, while there are definitely milestones that you have to get through, obstacles you have to get through to get into the financial world, into these types of careers, they don't tell you how successful you're going to be in your career, right? And I think a lot of people correlate their success with an exam to how well I'm going to do in a job. And that's just not true. It's just not. I've seen people all different spectrums of these get degrees kind of attitude versus A+ is the only way. And both of them could be successful and both of them could be unsuccessful. So passing an exam or your success on an exam doesn't dictate your future. It does open some doors for you, right? In terms of what career, but it doesn't tell you how successful you will be in that career. So that's part one. Part two is, actually it was 2 parts. You had the bad things that you learned as a kid, and then also how that translates into success in the future. But also, we are our own worst critic. If your best friend came to you one day and told you they are the worst person on the planet, they suck at life, they can't do anything right, they can't learn A versus B, they have no idea this is not even English, would you tell your friend, oh yeah, you're the worst? You're terrible. You can't do anything in life. You're the worst person on the planet. Would you say that to your best friend?
Can confirm, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't do that. What would we do? Oh, you're just being too hard on yourself. It is hard. We know it's hard, but you can do this, right? You would cheerlead them a little bit to bring up their spirits. Well, in a self-study program, you got to kind of do that for yourself. right? So I tell a lot of people that have those confidence issues, right? Maybe they're confident in all of life except with academics. Write a little message to yourself, right? Pretending as if you were talking to your best friend. What would you tell your best friend if they came to you saying all that nonsense? What would you tell them? And then read that message back to yourself. Okay. And read that message on a consistent basis. Write it on your bathroom mirror with a little marker or something like that. Write it in your studies. Read that before you start studying every time. Read it before you take an exam, right? You need somebody to bolster yourself up. And in a self-study situation, that person's going to be you, right? So that's something that I want to go ahead and make sure that you guys understand. That's like, if you take away anything, make sure you take away that, right? We are really mean to ourselves in our brains. We tell ourselves a bunch of bad things. We got to get that out of our minds, right? I have a lot of people that do that. And honestly, that can make or break whether you pass a test. Now, for those people who are doubting their abilities, your brain's a little bit on overload, okay? So we have to remember our brain doesn't want to fail, right? It's a little bit of that fear of failure thing going on. We don't want to fail in life. It's a really bad feeling when we fail. So what our brain does, especially in a question, is it goes, okay, here's how I feel about answer A. I think the answer A is the right answer. And then we get to answer D, and we're like, oh, wait, no, second. Answer A doesn't look that good anymore. And I talk myself out of it. It's because you doubted what you learned. You doubted that you spent several months learning this material and you actually do know what you know. And your brain lets you think out of the correct answer because it was so afraid of failing. Right? So trust your gut a little bit more. It's a little hard. It's a fine line to walk on overthinking versus just thinking enough, but it's something you have to practice, right? And we won't get it right every single time. It's just not possible. But we're going to do our best to really trust ourselves and trust what we did retain. And we're not going to know everything. That's impossible. Even us instructors, we don't know everything. We still get stumped on a few things here and there. And it happens to all of us, right? And just kind of understanding that that's the reality of what you're in. Okay. Now, for those of you that have the overconfidence thing, I was scoring in the 80s and the 90s in my exams, and I failed. Why did I do that? Well, what happens when we're overconfident? Do we pay attention as much? Mm-mm. Probably not, right? So you probably didn't read all those little tiny words in the question, like true, false, accept, exempt, or my favorite, which of the following is non-exempt except, right? That's my favorite one. Well, what does that even mean? Well, if you were overconfident, your brain probably thought, yeah, I got this. Let me just read this real quick and I can pull it out. Oops, you didn't read it properly. So that's probably what happens in those kinds of scenarios. And then for those of you who are really good in the beginning of a test, right? I feel positive about myself. I got this. I can do it, but I'm not overconfident. And then about halfway through, you spiral down and then, oh my gosh, negative Nancy comes out and she's screaming at you. What do? You revisit that message that I talked about earlier, the message that you were going to give to your friend that was saying how bad they were at life. That's the message you're going to read again. We have to bring ourselves up out of that negativity because that has a severe impact on how you perform in your exams. Okay.
Love it. Since you mentioned the practice exams, two quick questions about those. Where do those fit in with building confidence, the practice exams in Past Perfect? And how should students interpret their scores and their progress when they're looking at their results on the practice exams?
Good question. I love the practice exams. I think how people view them is a measurement of how much they retained from the material. And while yes, that is part of it, what the practice exams really do is train you on how to apply the knowledge. A lot of times we read a chapter, we think we got it, we understood everything, we take an exam, and it's Chinese. It's a whole different language. This is not what I read, right? Wait, what's going on? It's because of how the material is applied in that particular scenario. And that is one of the difficulties with the SIE and any other exam that you will take in our industry. The application and how they write the questions can be very tricky. And it can be disheartening when you don't understand everything that's going on in a question, right? So twofold with your exams. One, yes, a measurement of how much you retained. Two, also giving you practice on your testing strategy, how to play the game of this exam, right? So there's a strategy behind it. Also learning how to read the questions and how to tackle them and how to get better at that. Now, what I love about Past Perfect is when you take your exam, they have this proficiency page. I use this all the time. Yes, it's the page where you see which questions you get wrong and which questions you get right. And I love that. That's important. Make sure you're always reviewing all your questions, by the way. Even if you got it right, read the explanation. You might learn something more. But what I like about that is above that area where they give you the answers, they give you a proficiency breakdown. So they celebrate, hey, you were really good in this area, but I want to know where I wasn't so good, right? Because what it can indicate sometimes is maybe I thought I was really good at bonds, but if bonds keeps coming up as an area of weakness, well, then wait a second. There's something I did not understand that I'm not clicking with yet. So I also use those exams as a targeting mechanism to help me figure out where in all of these pages, hundreds of pages, do I need to go back and review because I missed something. I missed a paragraph, or maybe I understood something wrong. So it's not just, oh, I'm getting 50s on this test. It's where can I get better to improve my score? Because remember, you don't need to be an expert in everything. You just need to get enough points to pass the test. So where are those points at that you need to brush up on? Okay, so that's how I would use those practice exams. And please do not take one practice test and think you got it. Okay, even if you get a 90 on that practice test, you need to take more of them. Okay, just don't take. I've seen people do that and then they fail. I'm like, it's because you didn't do enough practice, right? Make sure you are going in using those exams to the best of your ability and using them not just as a retention material, retention measurement, but also a strategy, a targeting area for you to get better.
So retention is one piece, but also putting in the reps and the practice on going through the exam in a exam simulated environment, and then really referring to those areas that the Past Perfect system can identify. Hey, yeah, you got some of these questions right, but maybe there's a little bit more work you could do in this under this topic, or this one's pretty locked down, but if you maybe need more work on the bonds, right? And really using those tools to get an accurate assessment, feel confident where you are, and putting in the practice on running through the exam over so that it's really drilled into your head. That's what I'm hearing.
Sure, absolutely. Also, just kind of as a follow up on that, when people take exams and they say, oh, let me study the questions on what I got wrong, please do not, this is kind of a little sidebar here, so free tip. Please do not study the question to memorize how to answer that question. Mm-hmm. There's a likelihood you will never see that exact question again. What you need to use the exams for is testing on the concept. Do you understand the information that's being presented to you? Do you understand all the nitty-gritty details? How long you have to get this updated? How long you have to record that particular piece of paper? What type of information do you need? How do you use this particular product? Right? Do you understand everything around it, not just how to answer that one singular question? That is a pitfall or a little pothole that I see a lot of people fall into. Oh, I went back and I reviewed all the questions and I know how to answer that question. Like, great. But all you did was trained on how to answer that one question. If I ask you a different question about that same topic, you won't get it right because you didn't learn everything else around it. So little free tip there for you guys on your studies.
Take the broader view, right? Don't get too vision. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. So guys, we're getting pretty close to time to sign off on this third and final edition of our SIE Success live stream series. If you have questions in the next few minutes about ways that you can improve your SIE exam prep, avoid burnout, maximize your confidence so that you walk into the exam day locked and loaded and ready to go, please drop those in the comments and we will try to get to them. So if you got those, now is the time to ask those questions. In the meantime, Anushka, what's a mindset shift that you think you see SIE students needing to make?
I think it depends on the person, right? So there's a lot of us, especially in the finance world, where we are a little bit of overachievers. We were told all of our lives that if you don't get an A plus, you failed, right? A lot of us come from cultures like that or come from academic situations like that. And I think for those individuals, their mind shift should be, I don't need an A plus. It's not physically possible for you to learn everything for this test because this test has so much material. What you need to do is get as much points as possible, right? To get you to that passing level. And I think that's why they took away the score if you passed. Because back in my day when I took my exams, they actually told you what you got. I remember we'd go back into our office and say, oh yeah, I got like an 85 or a 95. And you know what everybody else told us? You studied too much. Like, well, I'm celebrating because I got a really good grade. No one's in school anymore. All they care about is passing, right?
Mhm.
So for those individuals, I say that's the biggest thing because I think a lot of times we get so hung up and I don't know every little detail. And if I don't know every detail, I'm going to fail. And that's not actually true, right? You just need to know a lot about a bunch of things and then you're good to go. You don't need to know everything. For those of us that don't have that issue, other things that we might need to change our mindset on is you can do this, regardless of where you've come from, regardless of what your family's like, regardless of how well you performed in school. You can do these activities. It might be harder for you, right? It might take a little extra effort. It might take more than one go at it, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. And I think that's where other people kind of really start to have issues with this exam and other exams as well, because everything we talked about here today, you apply it to your SIEs, but you can apply it to any exam in our industry. Like this is a transferable conversation. So I think for those people, it's really about, okay, why am I doing it? And let me take it to this next level, right? Let me try to do it. Let me put my best foot forward. Maybe I have to bring in extra tools. And what I'm not going to do is look at somebody else in my office and say, oh, well, they passed in 3 weeks. Why can't I do it? Well, you're not them. Okay. I'm not going to go on social media and have everybody talk to me how easy this is. It's a piece of cake. Well, maybe it's not a piece of cake for you. It was a piece of cake for them. You don't have the same brain that they do. And understanding that we are all different people. We learn differently. We absorb differently. We have different learning challenges. I've worked with people who have learning disabilities. I've worked with people who played heavy contact sports in college, and that had some issues with how much they could retain. I've worked with people who are in their 70s doing these exams that just, they've been out of school for a long time. They're not trying to learn new tricks, right? But they're putting their best foot forward. And all of those individuals can absolutely pass. It just might look a little different for them. Okay. So 2 things there for you guys.
All right. I love that. I think one of the key messages here is this is doable. It might be different. Doable might look different for everyone, right? Depending on where you're coming from, but you absolutely can pass this exam, and that you don't have to burn out to do it, right? You don't have to sacrifice everything. It takes hard work, and it's going to take a lot of hard work, like all probably good things take, but it doesn't have to be something that is absolutely all consuming and you sacrifice everything else in your life to achieve. And I really appreciate that message, Anushka. I think it's very valuable to our students because, like you said, people who are probably going into this line of work or attempting to high achievers, driven, probably a lot of type A personalities, and that self-compassion, that ability to think about how would you say this to your best friend if they were providing a lot of negative self-talk. I think those are really great key takeaways from this. And I can see why students really would enjoy working with you. on this process. So everyone, thank you so much for your time. If you've tuned in, we really appreciate you joining us for this third and final installation of our SIE Success Series. If you have not watched the other two live streams, please go back and find them on either our YouTube channel or on LinkedIn. And you can see those. There are a ton of great takeaways and tidbits and advice, tips that you can use while you're preparing for the SIE. Or, as Anushka just mentioned, these are transferable to other, especially securities industry exams that you may have to take. So if you've already cleared the SIE, but you're thinking about the Series 63 or Series 7 or any of those other exams, all of this information is something that can be really helpful for you in your exam prep. So for everyone who registered for this event, keep an eye on your email inbox. We really appreciate it. We're going to hook you up with a tip sheet and also a discount code for one of our SIE programs. So take a look at that discount. You got to act fast. That discount is good through April 30th. It's going to hit your inboxes a little bit later on today after we wrap up this live stream. So for those of you who registered and tuned in, really appreciate your time. I think this has been a great conversation. Anushka, really also appreciate your time. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I think that anybody who tuned in can walk away with really a lot of beneficial advice. So thank you. And we will probably consider doing some more of these live streams in the future. So Anushka, hopefully we will be tapping you for some of those. And if you got anything from any of these series as a viewer, please keep your eyes open and on our pages, because we may have some other ones coming up soon. So thank you very much, everybody. We're going to sign off. Good luck.
Bye and good luck, everybody.